Today we are reading Hot, Dirty Bertie Hot. Chapter 1. It was hot, scorching hot. Sitting at the back of the class, Bertie felt he was going to melt. It was ages till afternoon break. His head flopped onto the desk. He was certain it must be 1,000 degrees at the least. There ought to be a law against going to school in this heat. It was all right for the teachers, he thought bitterly. Miss Boot had a fan on her desk to keep her cool. The rest of them had to roast. Eugene's cheeks had gone bright pink. Darren's hair was sticking up like a paintbrush. Only Noel Nick looked as pale and neat as ever. Bertie moaned, "I'm dying of thirst." "Me too," said Darren. "Ask Miss Boot if we can get a drink." "You ask her," replied Bertie. Darren raised her hand. "Miss, may I go to the toilet?" "Certainly not. Wait till break time," snapped Miss Boot. Darren squirmed into his seat. "Please, I've been holding it since lunchtime." Miss Boot rolled her eyes. "Oh, very well." Darren got up, giving Bertie a wink as he left the class. There was a drinking fountain by the boys' toilets. Bertie watched him go and stuck up his hand. "Miss?" "No, you can't," snapped Miss Boot. "But Miss, No means no, Bertie," thundered Miss Boot. Bertie's shoulders slumped. It was so unfair. How come Darren got to go and he hadn't? He glanced up at the clock. He'd never last till break. He was actually dying of thirst. Soon he'd be nothing but clothes in a puddle of sweat. Ding! Ding! Ding-a-ding-ding! Bertie sat up. He knew that sound. It was Mr. Frosty's ice cream van. The van that trotted down the road, playing its merry little tune, and parked near the school gates. Bertie stared out of the window. What he would give now for a juicy Coca-Cola lolly, or an extra cone with soft ice cream. "Bertie!" Miss Boot was standing over him. "Yes, miss?" "Get on with your work. You haven't written 2 words. Bertie sighed. It was cruelty. He needed an ice cream. Besides, school was boring. Ice cream was good for you. It contained healthy stuff like, cream. If Miss Boot wasn't such a meanie, she would go and buy him one, which would be a dream for Bertie. Chapter 2. At break time, Bertie and his friends stood staring out their fence. They watched the nursery children come out and get their ice creams. "This is torture," thought Bertie. The van was parked 10 metres up the road, but it might as well have been a million miles. School was just like a prison. The gates were locked and the teachers were on patrol at all times. "There must be a way," said Bertie. "Face it," said Eugene. "It's impossible." Darren nodded. "Forget it." Bertie flopped against the fence. All he wanted was a teeny-weeny ice cream, with a chocolate flake, of course. Was that too much to ask? If he closed his eyes, he could almost taste it. Smooth, silky ice cream slipping down his throat. It might even hit himself. If he closed his eyes, he could almost think of the things that he might get. He opened his eyes and stared at the fence. There had to be a way out somewhere. Wait, what was that? A little further along, the wire fence was bent back. It left a tiny gap underneath, big enough for a cat or a small person to crawl through. Maybe they could escape. There was just one problem. Miss Boot, who was on playground duty. If she spotted them, she'd swoop down like a fire-breathing dragon. Bertie racked his brains. They needed some way to distract her. But what? Eugene tap dancing? No. Noel and Nick yelling that his pants were on fire? No, Noel and Nick wouldn't agree to that. What would get Mrs. Boots full attention? Bertie smiled. Aha, I've got an idea, he said to himself. Miss Boots sat on a bench in the shade, fanning herself with her sun hat. Darren wandered over. Miss, he said, what do rats look like? Miss Boots frowned. Rats? She said. They're like mice, only bigger and dirtier. Why? Oh, nothing, I just thought I saw one, said Darren. Miss Boot turned pale. Rats? In the school? If there was one thing she hated, it was rats. Filthy, horrible, vermin, rats. Where? She said. Over there, said Darren, pointing to the rubbish bins. Miss Boot followed him over. She was certain Darren had imagined it, although he could be telling the truth. All the same, she didn't want to get too close just in case. If there was a rat, it might run over her foot, or even up her leg. She shuddered at the thought of just thinking of a rat. Where was it? She demanded. Just there, by the bin, miss, said Darren. A great big rat with blood-red eyes, pointy teeth. Miss Boot went a bit closer. She bent down to look. Thump! Suddenly one of the bins jumped. Ah! Screamed Miss Boot, leaping back. If that was a rat, it was a monster. A king rat. I'll fetch Mr. Grouch. Rats are his job, really. Keep away from me. Keep away from there, Darren. She hurried off to find the caretaker. As soon as she was gone, Eugene popped up from behind the bin. Did it work? He asked. Like a dream, said Darren. He hurried over to Bertie by the fence. All clear? Said Bertie. Yes, but you better be quick, said Darren, holding up the fence. They didn't have long. Miss Boot would be back any minute now with Mr. Grouch. Bertie looked round. No one was watching. He got down and squeezed through a small hole. Now to grab the ice creams and make it back before everyone saw him. Chapter 3. Bertie waited, hopping from foot to foot. There were 2 other people in the queue and they were taking ages. Couldn't they just pay and leave? At any moment he expected to hear Miss Boot screeching his name. At last he reached to run. 3 large cones, please, he said, with sprinkles and chocolate flake. He watched the smooth, soft ice cream ooze from the nozzle. £3, said the ice cream man. Bertie handed over the money they'd scraped together and grabbed the cones. He'd been dreaming for this moment all day. He lifted one of the ice creams to his mouth. Dring! Bertie looked up. No way, surely that couldn't be the barrel already. But the playground was starting to empty. But his class were lining up and under the stern eye of Miss Boot. Bertie quickly ducked out of sight behind a tree. Darren stood in line with Eugene. He glanced back towards the fence. There was no sign of Bertie. What was he playing at? A hand tapped him on the shoulder. He turned round to see Noel Nick's smug face. Where's Bertie? Nick asked. How should I know? Shrugged Darren. He's here somewhere. Nick looked round. Really? I don't see him. Shall I tell Miss Boot? Mind your own business, said Darren. No talking, shouted Miss Boot. They trooped inside. Bertie came out from behind the tree and stared at an empty playground. Help! Now what? He couldn't crawl under the fence without Darren to hold it up. And anyway, he had his hands full of ice cream. This was terrible. He'd escaped, but now he couldn't get back in. Ice cream dripped down his fingers. How could he give Darren and Eugene their cornets now? But if he hung on to them, they'd only melt. It seemed a pity to let them go to waste. Bertie licked his own ice cream, then the other 2. All of his class would be sitting down now, and Miss Boot would be sure to notice his empty chair. Sooner or later, she'd worm the truth out of Darren and Eugene. Then a search party would be sent out with sniffer dogs. If they found him, he was in big trouble. Miss Boot would move him away from his friends. He'd have to sit at the front, probably next to a girl. Bertie felt ill at the thought. Somehow he had to get back into school. As he stood there, a lorry drew up and the driver jumped out. "Excuse me, son, is this Puddley Jr.?" he asked. Bertie nodded. "Thanks," said the driver. He looked at Bertie and frowned. "Shouldn't you be in school?" No," said Bertie. I'm off sick." "Right, so you're buying ice creams?" "Oh no, they're not mine. I'm just looking after them," explained Bertie. "Of course you are," smiled the driver to himself. Another man got out, and together they unloaded 2 large boxes from the back of the lorry. Bertie watched, licking his 3 cones. The driver went to the gates and spoke into the intercom. A moment later, the gates began to open and the men carried one of the boxes inside. "This is it," thought Bertie. "My chance to get in. But wait, what? What about Mrs. Stuff, the school secretary? No one gets past her eagle eyes." There had to be another way. Bertie looked at the remaining cardboard box, sitting beside the lorry. Quickly, he opened it up. Inside were flat bits of wood and bag and screws. Maybe there was just enough room. Clutching his ice cream cones, Bertie climbed into the box. Chapter 4. A surprise. A few minutes later, the 2 men returned. "This one as well? What's in them?" said the driver's mate. "How should I know? Just pick it up." Bertie heard a lot of grunting and felt the box lift off the ground. "It weighs a ton. They got a dead body in here?" Inside the box, Bertie hardly dared to breathe. All he had to do was wait till the box was set down. Then he could slip out and quietly sneak back to his class. With a bit of luck, Miss Boot hadn't even noticed he was missing. He licked out one of his coats. No point in saving them now. Back in class, Darren and Eugene were starting to worry. "Where is he?" hissed Eugene. "Search me," said Darren. "Where are our ice creams?" "Maybe he can't get back under the fence," worried Eugene. He looked round and caught no one's eye. "Trust that nosy creep to be snooping around," thought Eugene. "How much does he know? Did he see Bertie escape? Uh-oh, he's putting his hand up." "Miss Boot," said Nick. "Where's Bertie?" Miss Boot looked up. "Bertie?" she said. She stared at the empty chair where Bertie normally sat. "Where is Bertie?" she demanded. "I don't know," said Nick slyly while turning around. "I haven't seen him since break. Maybe he's ran away." Miss Boot frowned. "Darren? Do you know?" Darren's mind was a blank. "Oh, he's gone to wash his hands," said Eugene quickly. "Why?" said Miss Boot. "They were dirty," said Eugene. Miss Boot narrowed her eyes. "Why?" said Miss Boot. "They were dirty," said Eugene. Miss Boot narrowed her eyes. Bertie's hands were always dirty, but he'd never felt he needed to wash them before. Besides, it was 10 minutes since break. Where had the dratted boy got to this time? Knowing Bertie, he was somewhere he shouldn't be. "Give him 1 minute and then go and fetch him," she ordered. Just then, there was a knock on the door. 2 men in blue overalls shuffled in, carrying a large box. "Delivery!" panted one of them. "Where do you want it?" "Put it over there," said Miss Boot. She had been waiting for the new TV cabinet for weeks, but she could deal with that later, once she'd found Bertie. Inside the box, Bertie was getting cramp. His knees were squashed and in his face. Maybe it was safe to get out now. He peeped through a tiny hole in the box. He could see a thick pair of woolen tights. Yikes! He knows those tree trunk legs. There were Miss Boots. He was at the back of his own classroom. There was nothing for it but to sit tight and wait till everyone went home. At least He still had one cone left. Crunch. No, Nick looked up. What was that noise? It had come from the box, miss. Should he tell Miss Boot? He shot up his hand, obviously. Miss! Not now, Nicholas, sighed Miss Boot. But, miss, I think there's something in the box, said Nick. Yes, it's my TV cabinet, obviously, said Miss Boot. But I heard it, miss, it made a noise. Miss Boot frowned. First it was rats by the bins, now strange noises. There was something funny going on. She approached the cardboard box. Eugene and Darren looked at each other. Surely it couldn't be. Miss Boot ripped open the flaps. She gasped. Everyone had a big horror on their face. Only sly Nick had a pale, laughing face. Miss Boot ripped open the flaps and a face rose slowly from the box. Bertie had ice cream round his mouth. Large blobs had dripped down all his shirt. Greedy pig, gasped Darren. He ate them all. Bertie, boomed Miss Boot. What are you doing in there? Well, said Bertie. Miss Boot pulled him out by the arm. Wait, what is that on your face? She said. Have you been eating ice cream? Bertie swallowed. He brought out a messy blob from his pocket. Chocolate flake, he said. And that is the end of Dirty Bertie Hot. Sorry if you heard something in the background. That was Romy screaming. Hope you enjoyed.